There's this really powerful allure to the idea of a blue ocean, this vast uncontested market space, a place where a company can just swim freely,
Well,
right, without being bothered by competitors.
Absolutely. That promise of making rivals irrelevant, it's incredibly seductive for any business leader. It suggests this clear, almost utopian path to groundbreaking success. A pristine frontier just waiting to be claimed.
Yeah, it's easy to see why the concept has, well, really captured the business world's imagination. It's almost become a mantra, hasn't it? In boardrooms, innovation labs, everywhere.
It really has.
But, how realistic is this promise? Is creating a market like that truly a systematic analytical process?
Yeah.
Something any company can replicate just by following the steps? Or are there other forces at play? Less predictable things? Maybe you need creative genius or even just like lucky timing? Things you just can't bottle up and reproduce.
That's the core question, isn't it?
So in this deep dive, we're going to re-examine the underlying assumptions of the Blue Ocean Strategy framework. We'll use the sources you've provided to really delve into the realities and maybe the myths of market creation. Our mission today is to figure out if these famous success stories are genuinely replicable blueprints, for future innovation, or if maybe they hide these immense, often understated risks that, frankly, the average company might not be ready for. So, okay, let's start by laying out what Blue Ocean Strategy actually proposes, because, as we said, it's become incredibly influential. What's the core proposal here?
Well, at its heart, the framework really centers on what the authors Kim and Mawborn call value innovation. And this is a really critical distinction they make. It's not just about technological innovation for its own sake. We've all seen products like that, right? Tech marvels nobody actually wants.
Right, cool tech, but no market.
Exactly. Instead, value innovation is about creating these leaps in value for buyers while simultaneously driving down costs. It's that dual focus differentiation and low costs that lets a company create new demand and, crucially, establish uncontested market space, basically making existing competition irrelevant by offering something fundamentally different and usually more accessible.
Okay, differentiation and low cost. That sounds like the holy grail.
It kind of is, or at least that's the promise. And the book itself, Blue Ocean Strategy, it's been an absolute phenomenon. Over 3.6 million copies sold globally, published in a record-breaking 44 languages. It's taught in more than 1,800 universities worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah, that widespread adoption just shows its immense influence and the deep appeal of that core message. You don't have to fight in the bloody red ocean of competition. You can create your own peaceful blue one.
So the allure is this double promise, finding new markets, but also offering a systematic, repeatable process to get there. It suggests market creation isn't just, a bolt of lightning or sheer luck. It's something any company, even a big old incumbent, can intentionally craft. That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you think about how often established businesses struggle with, like, internal inertia and that fear of cannibalization.
Oh, definitely.
The idea that new ventures will just eat into your existing sales. Blue Ocean Strategy specifically says that fear is often exaggerated.
Absolutely. That's a key part of their argument. The framework directly counters that common belief that only nimble startups can create entirely new markets. They argue that even established incumbents can carve out blue oceans from within their core businesses, often by overcoming those very fears of cannibalization.
So you don't have to go way outside your comfort zone.
Not necessarily. The idea is that companies can find these opportunities by rethinking their existing business boundaries, their customer base, identifying non-customers and figuring out how to convert them. And to really back up this systematic approach, the authors even extended their thinking into blue ocean leadership.
Okay, leadership too.
Yeah, this framework specifically focuses on how to build good execution into the strategy. It uses a structured four-step process. Typically, it involves first, really seeing your leadership reality, like how leaders actually spend their time. Then developing future leadership options. What could they do differently to unlock value? Third, selecting the critical changes to make, focusing on high-impact, low-cost actions. And finally, making the changes fair.
Fair process.
Exactly, through what they call fair process principles. Engagement, explanation, and expectation clarity. Engagement means involving people. Explanation is clarifying the why behind decisions, and expectation clarity is making sure everyone knows the new rules. So this whole approach from strategy to leadership really suggests a systematic, almost procedural roadmap for innovation and market creation.
That idea of a repeatable, systematic process, it's incredibly powerful. It promises control, predictability, in what often feels like a pretty chaotic business world. but it immediately makes you ask, how predictable is this path to a blue ocean? I mean, are we truly in control here? Or are there fundamental uncertainties that make systematic replication really challenging, maybe even, a bit of a pipe dream?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Hamilton Helmer, in his book Seven Powers, makes this crucial distinction that I think sheds a lot of light here. He differentiates between statics, which is basically what makes a business valuable at a specific moment, like, say, Intel's microprocessor business having a powerful network effect.
Right, the source of its strength.
Exactly. And dynamics, which is how that attractive state is actually achieved and sustained over time. Think of statics as the advantages your business has, like a fortress or a unique skill. Dynamics are the ongoing battles to build, defend, and expand those advantages.
Okay, statics and dynamics.
Now, Helmer suggests that exceptional returns, what people call alpha, that extra return beyond what's expected, are primarily found in situations of opacity.
Opacity, meaning?
Meaning situations where information isn't transparent or easily available to everyone. It creates an informational advantage for those who can see through the fog, so to speak. And a primary driver of this opacity is what he calls high flux.
High flux, like constant change.
Exactly, a fast-changing, turbulent environment. Imagine trying to predict detailed weather patterns during a hurricane. That's the kind of high-flux environment Helmer talks about. It's not just fast-changing, it's fundamentally unpredictable in its specifics. Creates huge uncertainty about future cash flow, makes forecasting incredibly difficult.
Right.
So this means finding a value moment, a breakthrough opportunity, often involves navigating conditions that are inherently unpredictable. Helmer's view suggests success might come more from being able to penetrate that opacity, make sense of the flux.
Rather than just following a rigid blueprint that assumes everything is clear.
Precisely. It suggests adaptive insight is more important than just following a predefined path, because the path itself might be shifting under your feet.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me, because that creates this fascinating paradox, doesn't it? If new value, this alpha, is mainly found in environments with high flux and opacity, where things are fast-changing and unpredictable, how does that square with a supposedly repeatable strategy for creating blue oceans? It sounds like you're searching for something you can't fully define or predict, like trying to plan a precise route through a constantly shifting fog bank.
Yeah.
The very conditions that enable the breakthrough seem to define the idea of a clear, systematic method.
That absolutely raises a critical question. And it highlights a fundamental challenge, one that, interestingly, the authors of Blue Ocean Strategy themselves warn about. They call them the red ocean traps.
Okay, traps to avoid.
Yeah, common pitfalls. Things that make companies think they're creating a blue ocean when they're actually just, stirring up more red water. One really significant trap is equating creative destruction with market creation.
Meaning, just because you disrupt something doesn't mean you've created a new market.
Exactly. Many tech innovations, even ones that win awards, ultimately fail to create truly new markets, often because they're too out there, too complicated, or lacking a necessary ecosystem. The Segway is a classic example they mention. Remember the hype.
Oh yeah, huge hype. Supposed to change cities.
Right, but despite its technological novelty, it never really established that new market space its creators envisioned. It was an engineering marvel, sure, but it struggled. Lack of clear utility for most people, high price point, and it just didn't fit into an existing ecosystem or create a compelling new one.
So it wasn't a lack of innovation, but a disconnect with value innovation, market readiness.
Precisely. It was a cool invention, but it didn't create new demand at scale.
So market creation isn't just about inventing something new then. It's not enough to be innovative. There's something deeper, more elusive, beyond just the tech wizardry.
Absolutely. The red ocean traps really emphasize that market creation is not the same as technological innovation or creative destruction. Just developing amazing tech or disrupting an industry doesn't automatically mean you get a new, uncontested market. The authors advise managers to shift focus towards attracting new customers, those non-customers currently using alternatives or nothing at all, instead of just fighting over existing ones.
Looking beyond the current pond.
Exactly. And they suggest worrying less about traditional market segmentation and moving beyond just focusing on premium versus low cost within the existing industry rules. It really underscores that market creation is way more nuanced, often less direct, and definitely less predictable than just picturing an empty space and building a product for it.
It sounds like it needs deep empathy for unmet needs, things people can't even articulate yet.
That's a huge part of it. And understanding ecosystem readiness, No amount of tech brilliance alone can guarantee that. And related to this, we absolutely have to consider the immense, often understated risks of trying to create a market that doesn't exist yet. Howard Marks, in The Most Important Thing Illuminated, makes this crucial point. Much of risk is subjective, hidden, and unquantifiable.
Subjective and hidden. That sounds worrying.
It is. He argues long-term investment success comes more from risk control than from just aggressive speculative bets. He says results are often determined more by how many losers they have and how bad they are than by the greatness of their winners.
Ouch. So avoiding the big losses matters more than hitting the occasional home run.
That's his argument, and he gives the stark math. A 40% loss needs a 67% gain just to get back to even. It shows how devastating big setbacks can be. This perspective suggests that chasing a blue ocean, while tempting, has to be balanced with a really sober assessment of these unquantifiable downsides. Dreaming of big wins isn't enough. You have to protect against those potentially crippling losses.
So if a company just dives headfirst into a blue ocean without truly understanding these hidden subjective risks, it could be financially devastating, sink the whole ship before it even leaves port.
Absolutely.
And considering human nature often leans towards overconfidence, how do leaders fight that bias when they're venturing into such uncharted, risky territory?
That's an excellent point. The allure of the blue ocean can be a powerful psychological drug almost. Burton Malkiel, in A Random Walk Down Wall Street, talks about this from a behavioral finance perspective. He notes investors are often overconfident in their judgments, and as a result, they invariably do too much trading for their own financial well-being.
We think we know more than we do.
Pretty much. And that overconfidence, that common human trait, could easily lead companies and their leaders to overestimate their ability to predict and create new markets successfully. It might blind them to those subjective, unquantifiable risks Marx talks about, makes them pursue ventures without enough caution, believing they have a level of foresight or control that just doesn't exist in these high-flex situations.
It's that seductive narrative of the first mover advantage.
Without fully appreciating the potential first-mover disadvantage of pouring resources into unproven demand.
Okay, so if a systematic, predictable approach isn't the whole story, and it really sounds like it isn't, what about the human element? The visionaries, the leaders, the teams actually doing the work. How do they navigate this massive uncertainty and high flux to actually forge new markets? It can't all be a blueprint.
No, and this leads us straight to the critical role of individual genius, sheer willpower, and just relentless, almost obsessive effort. Think about Elon Musk, as described in Ashley Vance's biography. His approach isn't about following some predefined, calm, analytical plan for market creation.
Doesn't sound like him, no.
Not at all. It's described as a perpetual motion machine that runs on a weird mix of dissatisfaction and eternal hope. Musk demands the impossible on top of the impossible from his people. He constantly pushes boundaries. The book mentions SpaceX often tests a dozen other objectives in secret during a mission, way beyond what's public, just to gather more data, push the envelope further.
Wow. Constant experimentation.
Extreme experimentation, yeah. Coupled with this singular, often disruptive vision, and frankly, an almost irrational optimism. It suggests a dynamic, organic process of shaping and creating markets, not following a neat, replicable blueprint. It's about sheer, unyielding force of will.
That phrase, perpetual motion machine, fueled by dissatisfaction and hope, it really sticks. It sounds less like following a map and more like a high-wire act, powered by pure willpower and optimism against the odds.
It really does.
A relentless, almost chaotic push toward the future he envisions, not a calm journey into some pre-identified empty space.
Absolutely. And similarly, you look at Steve Jobs in Walter Isaacson's biography. Here's a leader who had this uncanny ability to rethink an industry and read consumers in ways that were anything but systematic in the blue ocean sense. Jobs was known for stoking rivalries, even inside Apple. He believed it often led to better products.
Like the Mac versus Lisa story.
Exactly. His decision to reconceive the Mac as a desktop machine with a graphical interface instead of an inexpensive portable appliance was deliberately designed to likely undercut the Lisa project led by another team. That highlights a dynamic competitive process, driven by a strong, often disruptive vision and a willingness to provoke internal competition. Not just identifying and moving into an uncontested space by avoiding rivals.
He was creating new markets by fundamentally challenging existing ones, often aggressively.
Both internally and externally, yes. And then there's this absolutely vital element of learning through iteration, embracing failure, which is just the opposite of a perfectly predictable path. Ben Horowitz, in The Hard Thing About Hard Things, shares this paradoxical but critical insight. Sometimes when you're trying to create something totally new, he says the only way to do that was to ship and try to sell the wrong product.
Ship the wrong product. That sounds painful.
It is, he says, you fall on your faces, but you learn fast and do what was needed to survive. He talks about how his company, Loud Cloud Opsware, had to completely pivot its product multiple times, learning from customer feedback, market realities. And he discusses that miserable but often necessary task of rebuilding the executive team when people aren't qualified for the new direction. That painful, continuous adaptation needed to navigate turbulence and find a path forward, even if it's not the one you first imagined.
It's survival through the messy reality of building something from scratch.
Exactly.
It's messy. This really brings the lean startup to mind, doesn't it? That whole emphasis on continuous innovation through experimentation, like a scientific method for business amidst all this uncertainty.
It does, very much so. Eric Ries, in The Lean Startup, explicitly builds on principles from lean manufacturing and agile development. He advocates for continuous innovation through rigorous scientific inquiry, emphasizing controlled split test experiments within a sandbox for innovation.
Testing small changes constantly.
Right. Incubating changes in small teams, meticulously measuring their impact instead of launching these fully formed blue oceans from the get-go, like an online company testing 2 versions of a web page to see which converts better, learning quickly what actually works. Rees also points out that chronic problems in organizations often stem from bad processes, not bad people.
Right, the process itself.
Yeah, and he champions methods like the 5 whys to systematically dig down and reveal those underlying procedural issues. It fosters a culture of continuous learning and adaptation. So it is a systematic approach, but it's systematic for learning and adapting, not necessarily for predicting the final outcome.
That's a key difference.
A huge difference. And to actually endure this iterative, often frustrating process, you need what Angela Duckworth calls grit.
Grit, yeah, perseverance.
Absolutely essential. She talks about deliberate practice, that intense, focused effort on improving weaknesses, pursuing a beyond-the-self purpose, a motivation bigger than just personal gain, which helps sustain you through setbacks, and cultivating the hope to try again. That resilience is crucial. It's not about giving up when the first blueprint fails. It's pushing through. You know, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged has this compelling image. Ben Neely, the contractor, says, muscles, that's all it takes to build anything in the world. And Dagny Taggart, taking on this huge risk with a new metal, just declares, it's mine, full responsibility.
That commitment.
Yeah, that immense individual fortitude and unwavering commitment needed when you're venturing into the unknown, when conventional wisdom offers no guide, and that blue ocean is anything but clear.
Okay, so putting this all together, what does it mean for strategy? Is it really about finding that magical, uncontested space? Or is it more about building the muscle, the resilience to compete and adapt constantly, even in waters that look pretty red? It sounds like even when you create a market, you're still engaging with competitors sooner or later.
It definitely suggests a continuous, active engagement with competitive dynamics. You know, playing to win explicitly says finding a new place to play takes serious imagination and effort. And it also candidly admits some luck doesn't hurt.
Refreshing honesty.
Isn't it? But crucially, it stresses the importance of competitive analysis. Evaluating potential strategies for how robust they are against current rivals and, importantly, anticipated competitor reactions.
So you have to think about how others will respond.
Always. It's a realistic view. The market rarely stays uncontested for long. Any advantage you create, it attracts attention, it attracts responses. You might be first into that blue ocean, but you'll likely see other ships on the horizon pretty quickly.
Makes sense.
And Michael Porter, in his classic Competitive Strategy, notes that in emerging industries, the strategic degrees of freedom are the greatest. That's when the leverage from good strategic choices is highest. Firms in these new markets have to actively shape industry structure through their choices, product policy, marketing, pricing, all aiming to secure the strongest position in the long run.
So even in a new space, you're still shaping the rules, contending.
Exactly. It's about establishing favorable rules of the game, maybe creating barriers to entry for others. It's not just discovering an empty field, it's about cultivating and defending it. This perspective reinforces that even in supposedly new spaces, competitive forces are always at play. Strategic skill is needed to secure and maintain any advantage, to make that blue ocean defensible, not just a temporary pond.
Okay, given all this theory, all the uncertainty we've discussed, let's really test these ideas against some real-world experiences from the sources. Do these stories back up the blue ocean dream of uncontested space? Or do they maybe reveal more of the messy reality, the immense effort involved that we've been uncovering?
Okay, let's look at Xerox as detailed in John Brooks's Business Adventures. This is back in 1959. The company, then called Haloid Xerox, introduces its first automatic xerographic office copier. Now, you have to imagine the world back then. Mostly carbon paper, messy mimeographs, maybe manual typing for duplicates, tedious stuff.
Right, making copies was a huge pain.
A huge pain. Xerox's invention was a complete paradigm shift. Dry, instant, high-quality copies, unlike anything people had seen. So in 1959, sales were $33 million. By 1966, just 7 years later, over $500 million.
Wow, that's explosive growth.
Explosive. The growth rate was so fast, the chief executive joked that if it kept up, Xerox sales would eventually exceed the entire U.S. GNP. It absolutely created a completely new market, became the most spectacular big business success of the 1960s. And for investors, a stock market Golconda, a gold mine.
A clear market creation moment.
Undeniably, but the narrative really emphasizes the unique technological breakthrough xerography itself and the immense, almost instant enthusiasm it generated. Critically, Xerox also pioneered an innovative business model. They leased the machines instead of selling them outright and charged per copy.
Making it accessible.
Exactly. It made the technology affordable for businesses of all sizes, which just fueled its blue ocean status even more. So it was this singular moment of discovery, brilliant execution, and business model innovation all coming together. Less a systematic, repeatable process, more a unique convergence.
That's an incredible success story, a defining moment. But what about the flip side? A cautionary tale.
Yeah.
When a company tries hard to define and create new demand, does all the research, plans meticulously, and it just completely fails to connect. The Edsel sounds like exactly that.
Oh, the Ford Edsel is the classic cautionary tale, also from Business Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Ford poured absolutely immense resources into trying to create a market for this new car in the mid-1950s. They did tons of market research, surveyed thousands for names, did detailed demographic studies to pinpoint the target buyer.
Tried to engineer the customer.
Pretty much. They developed this detailed personality crusade for the car, trying to make it appeal to spirited but responsible adventurers, evoke good style and taste. The positioning was on its way up, suggesting, the e-car has faith in you, son, we'll help you make it. The design had distinctive elements, like that infamous vertical horse collar grille, meant to make it stand out.
So meticulous planning.
Seemingly meticulous, yes. But despite all that effort to define a market, craft a persona, design a unique car, the Edsel was a spectacular, unmitigated disaster. The design was widely mocked, the timing was terrible, it launched right into a recession, and when consumer tastes were shifting towards smaller, more economical cars.
Bad luck, bad timing.
And the perceived personality just didn't resonate. It illustrates that profound unpredictability of consumer acceptance, and those significant subjective risks involved in trying to build a market that doesn't exist yet, even with tons of planning.
So even the best research can't guarantee people will want what you build.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that analysis and marketing can't eliminate those subjective, hidden, and unquantifiable risks Howard Marks talked about. Ford tried to engineer a blue ocean, and it just sank.
Okay, so methodical doesn't guarantee success. It can even lead to spectacular failure. Highlights the uncertainty perfectly. What about a company that succeeded wildly, not by finding a blue ocean, but by absolutely mastering competition in a crowded, existing red ocean?
For that, Sam Walton's Walmart is an excellent counterpoint to the whole uncontested market ideal. You read Sam Walton Made in America, and his strategy was intensely competitive, incredibly pragmatic. He wasn't looking for empty blue oceans. He was dominating the red ocean of retail by being smarter, leaner, and more customer-focused than basically anyone else.
How did he do that?
Well, for instance, he'd routinely buy newspapers from Dallas, Little Rock, Fort Smith, meticulously cut out competitor ads for everyday stuff, motor oil, socks, whatever. Then he'd use those competitor prices to create Walmart's ads with real hot prices to pull customers in. He insisted on things like toothpaste for 16 cents a tube just to aggressively beat rivals, often by taking a lower margin to drive traffic and volume.
Relentless focus on price and competition.
Absolutely. And moreover, Walton was an avid student of management theory. He really incorporated ideas from people like W. Edwards Deming, the quality management guru. He focused intensely on pushing responsibility and authority down to the front lines, to the department managers.
Empowering employees.
Hugely. The people closest to the customers and the products were empowered to make decisions, spot problems, suggest improvements. Walton famously spent loads of time visiting stores, just listening to clerks, truck drivers, stockers, getting those ground level insights.
So it wasn't about avoiding competition.
Not at all. It was about outcompeting in an existing red ocean through relentless efficiency, obsessive customer focus, and genuine employee empowerment. That rigorous, competitive, customer-centric approach turned Walmart from one store into a retail giant with $44 billion in sales when he died, serving 40 million people a week. It proves that deep analysis and execution within a competitive market can create enormous value.
A very different path to success.
Wow.
Okay, one final example, and this one feels like a warning about the appearance of innovation, especially in complex areas like finance, where a promised blue ocean might hide something much worse than just bad judgment.
Yeah. The story of Enron, drawn from Malkiel's A Random Walk Down Wall Street, is a really powerful cautionary tale. It's about the dangers of a perceived blue ocean that ultimately had no real value underneath. Enron management worked hard to cultivate this image of being innovative pioneers, creating complex new markets. They were praised for pioneering markets in energy derivatives, broadband capacity trading, even weather derivatives.
Sounded cutting edge like new blue oceans.
Exactly. That presented themselves as discovering these uncharted, highly lucrative territories. New, complex financial products few people really understood, promising huge future profits. Seems like blue oceans. But as we now know, Enron management engaged in a myriad of complex partnerships that obfuscated the true financial position of the firm. These led to a massive overstatement of Enron's earnings.
The creative accounting.
Highly creative. Using things like special purpose entities, SPEs, with names like Chuco and LJM, designed to keep huge amounts of debt off Enron's balance sheet and artificially inflate the profits they reported. For instance, a joint venture with Blockbuster, which completely failed to deliver on its promise of video on demand, still allowed Enron to count a $115 million loan related to it as profit.
Wow, just pure fiction.
Pretty much. And Wall Street analysts, caught up in the hype, the perceived innovation, the complex financial engineering, they applauded and called Ken Lay the mastermind of the year. It just highlights how creative maneuvering, presented as pioneering new markets, can actually be built on a firm foundation of deception. It led to catastrophic losses for investors and shows how the allure of innovation, the promise of uncharted territory, can be exploited to create an illusion of value, turning a seemingly blue ocean into a treacherous, murky swamp.
A chilling example. Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that the concept of a blue ocean has this immense appeal, right? It promises an escape from that fierce day-to-day competition. But the sources we've looked at, they paint a much more complex picture. They suggest these clear, uncontested waters are often harder to find and certainly harder to stay in than the simple metaphor implies.
Yeah, I think that's right. What we've seen is that while genuine market creation can lead to extraordinary success, think Xerox, it's often less about following some predictable, systematic process. It's much more about navigating profound uncertainty, dealing with environments full of high flux and opacity, where information isn't clear and things are changing fast.
Requires different skills then.
Definitely. It seems to require visionary leadership, relentless iteration, a real willingness to learn from failure, which is inevitable, and that acute awareness of those often unquantifiable risks that Howard Marks highlighted. And those red ocean traps are a critical reminder. Not all innovations create new markets. Market creation is different from just technological novelty. It demands that deep connection to buyer value and ecosystem readiness.
So ultimately, the path to groundbreaking value isn't always about magically discovering some completely empty ocean. It might be more about having the grit, the flexibility to constantly redefine value and just outmaneuver competitors in the waters you're already in, like
Yeah.
Sam Walton did, perfecting the red ocean of retail.
That's one path.
Or maybe it's about having that sheer, almost irrational will and singular vision, like a Musk or a Jobs, to just build something truly new despite enormous odds, navigating the flux with force of personality and constant iterative learning.
Two very different but potentially successful approaches to creating massive value. Neither seems to fit the simple follow the steps blue ocean model perfectly.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. What if the most enduring blue oceans, the most sustainable advantages, aren't actually found by escaping competition entirely? What if they're created by continuously evolving, constantly redefining value within existing, seemingly red waters, driven perhaps by a deeper purpose and just an unyielding commitment to learning and adaptation? Something to think about until our next deep dive.